Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome. Welcome to the Pacific Northwest Roundtable. My name is Simbiat Yusuf. We're just going to start now. The webinar is being recorded, and we don't want to wait any longer for all of the information we'll be sharing with you all. I am Simbiat Yusuf. I am the events manager at Fourth, and we have a great panel discussion for you all. We will be exploring 3 different programs and 3 different use cases, which includes medium and heavy duty charging, EV car sharing, as well as agricultural electrification happening in the Pacific Northwest. We also have a special guest today from Fourth, Alexandra Everett. She is a program manager at Fourth. She has some updates on the ODOT charging rebate program. And now I will pass it over to Alexandra for those comments now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Cindy, and thank you all for letting me pop into your meeting to make this quick announcement. So this is part of Oregon's Plugging in Oregon initiative. It's called Community Charging Rebates, and it's an $8 million multi-year program that will offer rebates to public and private entities to reduce the cost of purchasing, installing, and maintaining qualified level 2 EV charging equipment at publicly accessible parking lots and also multifamily housing throughout Oregon. And level 1 charging rebates are also offered, but that will be only for multifamily housing. And fourth role in this is to provide education, outreach, and a technical assistance component to ensure that we're outreaching to priority communities, developing a pipeline of applicants, and also helping to reduce barriers to funding access for different communities. So now a little bit more details about the rebate. Eligible applicants include businesses, nonprofit organizations, state, local, and tribal government entities. But that's not, there's a lot more applicants that are available as well within these brackets. Like I mentioned, funding will be dispersed in rounds and it will also launch over multiple years. We're anticipating the first round to launch summer 2023 with $1.75 million available. This rebate is a first come, first serve reimbursable incentive, and the majority of the funds are reserved for underserved, high disparity, and rural communities throughout Oregon. And now for the big announcement of what are the numbers really are. So the first round rebate for level 2 chargers are set at $4,250 per plug for public charging and $5,500 per plug for charging at multifamily housing for level 2. Both are also capped at 75% of the total eligible project costs. And level 1 chargers are set at $750 for multifamily housing only. There's a minimum of 2 plugs and a maximum of 8 plugs per site to be eligible for the reimbursement. Unfortunately, the costs incurred prior to program launch date will not be eligible, but applicants will have the opportunity to reserve funding prior to incurring any costs and starting the project. And now this is where all of you come in. Stacking the rebate with other available incentives, such as from local utilities, is allowed and encouraged. Utilities could promote this to your customers of your own rebates and incentive programs as an added benefit to reducing cost burden and also promoting installation of charging infrastructure. ODOT also has fail-safes incorporated to ensure that applicants cannot claim more than 100% of eligible project costs. So we hope, and I hope, that you will join us in promoting and spreading information about this rebate on your platforms. For anyone that's interested, I have outreach and informational documents available that you can post on your websites or on your platforms. We'll also have training available for key account managers and anyone else that is interested. Okay, so that was a really high, really quick overview of the rebate program. The guidelines are still being finalized. So basically all of the information I just shared is subject to change. And we're only allowed to share a very limited amount of information, so I'm sure there's lots of questions. But if you have anything to ask me, I will pop my email in the chat, so we can follow up and chat a little bit more about this. We're expecting ODOT to make the official announcement within the next few months, so be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you so much for letting me pop in and talk really fast, and I hope to work with you all soon.
Thank you, Alexander. And I just realized in all of the excitement of our special guest, we forgot a little bit of intro from Thomas at Endicott at BEF. So before we pass it over to the speakers today, Thomas, do you have any opening remarks for our attendees today?
Yes, I just want to welcome everyone here to the quarterly EV Roundtable, and I think many of you have attended in the past. This is a collaboration between Bonneville Environmental Foundation and Forth, and this is a forum for Pacific Northwest utilities for learning about all things electric vehicle and also sharing information among the different participants. And I also just wanted to make a couple other notes. Originally, we were hoping to have Brian Schulberg from Midco Bus Company share some information about the big Oregon winner in the EPA electric school bus rebate program, which was Banks School District that is planning to replace 9 of their 15 buses with fully electric Navistar International buses. And we're hoping to have Brian and potentially someone from Navistar and someone from PGE to join us at a future webinar. And I also just wanted to make note that this year, many publications have declared this year, 2023, the year of the electric vehicle. And just some highlights that you all may have seen in the news. Both Oregon and Washington now have adopted California's Clean Car 2 rule, which all vehicles sold in California, Oregon, and Washington after 2035 will be electric vehicles. California also currently 1 in 5 new car sales in California is electric, and in Oregon and Washington it's 1 in 10. And of course, lots of programs, tax credits, and whatnot that have been extended. So this is an exciting year, 2023, and look forward to the presentations here today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Now we will pass it along to our speaker. First, we'll hear from Steve Gutman. Steve Gutman is the Public Sector Sales Manager at NextEra Mobility. Steve will be sharing some information on medium and heavy duty fleet charging strategies. I'll pass it over to Steve.
Thank you, Simbi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Let's see. All right, here we are. Hi, everybody. As Symbiot said, my name is Steve Gutman. I was actually with Forth for 3 years until about 6 months ago when I jumped ship over to the private sector. I now work for NextEra Mobility, and I do much of the same sort of work I was doing at Forth, but now I have a Fortune 200 company with a big fat balance sheet behind me to help do these kinds of projects. I don't know if you all know about NextEra Energy, but it's actually a pretty well-entrenched entity in our region. NextEra developed the Van Sickle Ridge wind farm in Eastern Oregon. It was, I think, the first big wind farm that was developed in the country. And then since then has just kept building wind farms, solar farms, battery storage, all over the country. I think we have operations in 36 states and pretty big operations in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and in the Pacific Northwest. In fact, the Wheat Ridge Renewable Energy Facility that was announced by PGE a little while ago, I think last year, was developed jointly by PGE and NextEra. So we're the biggest company nobody's ever heard of. We're the largest generator of wind and solar energy in the US, America's 5th largest capital investor of any kind. And as of about 2 years ago, NextEra moved into transportation electrification. And we did that by purchasing an entity called EIQ Mobility. EIQ Mobility was a consultancy out of Silicon Valley that to date has helped about 200 different fleet operators electrify their fleets. And EIQ Mobility would do this through a planning process where they help identify which vehicles in a institution's fleets are easiest to replace with electric and make the most sense. And anyway, so the big point that I'm going to make in this presentation is that fleet electrification, don't let anybody tell you it's an easy and simple process, because it's really not. It does takes a lot of effort and expertise to do it in a way that doesn't result in big mistakes. The process that we work with our institutional customers to it's a three-part process. First planning, and then designing, and then building and operating EV charging infrastructure. The plan and design phase has more to do with vehicles, and then the build and operate phase has more to do with actual chargers. Let's see, how does this thing? Okay. This is the first step. This is our fleet electrification advisory phase. What we do here is we develop a fleet electrification master plan. We work with institutions, we get data from them about their existing fleet. Ideally, that would be telematics data, but for many fleets, it's simple mileage data. And then we basically pull in that information, put it into a pretty sophisticated software tool, and it spits out what the most appropriate analogous electric vehicle would be to replace the existing fleet vehicle. We also do organizational change management, because it's obviously, it's not always super easy to get all stakeholders on board with fleet electrification. So we help out with that. And then we begin to help design on-site infrastructure. The second phase is uses a different tool called our Reveal software. And really what we do here is we ingest, we do this not only for public institutions, but also for private fleet operators. So package delivery companies, telecoms companies, food and beverage delivery companies. And so the way we do this second step of the process is we input vehicle routes, and we also can incorporate on-site building load and on-site solar production, local tariff information, weather data, and then information about different chargers. And then we can, the process generates sort of a predictive, forward-looking plan of what an electrified fleet is going to cost. And as you can see from the chart here, electrifying fleets can be actually quite expensive, but they can also be cheap. There's a huge difference as to whether the charging is managed or unmanaged. And so one of the value adds that we bring is we not only help you make the conversion, but then help to make sure that that fueling those vehicles is as inexpensive as possible. So again, plan, design, and then build and operate. Build and operate is really it's our approach to actually getting infrastructure in the ground. And what we do not do is we do not install EV charging infrastructure and then turn it over to site hosts and walk away. We have received a lot of feedback, especially from large institutional customers, that they really don't want to be in the business of providing charging infrastructure, even for themselves. Big institutions tend to install a few chargers, then they realize after a while, oh, this thing broke, and maybe the installer is no longer around, or and so they're moving, more and more large institutions are moving toward something called charging as a service, where an external third party like NextEra, and there are other companies doing this as well, will design, build, install, own, and operate the charging infrastructure and just lease it to the end using entity for a monthly fee. It's called charging as a service. It's becoming more and more common. And it's the model that we've chosen to pursue because, again, the large institutions that we tend to work with, they don't want to be in the business of installing and maintaining chargers. They want one neck to squeeze when something goes wrong. And so we not only install the chargers, but we continue to own them. And we just, we basically collect a monthly fee to provide high levels of service and to make sure that whenever their vehicles need to get out on the road, they're ready. We do this with 3 different service models, which are pictured here: en route highway charging, customer owned behind the fence depots, and then a new model that we call e-ports. These are the dedicated offsite charging hubs. I'm going to take a pause for a minute and see if anybody, actually, I think I'm supposed to wait till we're done and then ask for questions. So I'll keep going. Only have a few more slides. So looking at these 3 models, service models that NextEra offers, the en-route highway charging, we're doing this through a project called Green Lane. And this is, you can really think of it as an initiative. It's a very high capital initiative that we're doing in a partnership with Daimler Trucks North America and BlackRock to develop a network of sort of electric truck stops. And we're doing this along the West Coast, starting in California and working our way north. We're doing it in Texas, in what's known as the Texas Triangle, between the 3 large metropolitan centers in Texas, and then on the East Coast as well. What this will be is essentially we will build big truck stops. We'll bring in the necessary power. These truck stops will actually, I've been told that they will require about as much power as a town of 30,000 people. So in many cases, the local infrastructure won't be sufficient. So we'll help bring that infrastructure, or we'll build distributed generation resources like a big wind farm and some battery storage alongside the facilities. And then we will make those available to long haul truck operators, including but not limited to Daimler, so that they can charge their big Class 8 trucks and other vehicles as well. The folks using this, they will generally subscribe to the network, but it's something we're very excited about, and we've just Daimler and BlackRock and NextEra have the joint venture in place. We're starting to identify locations, and we'll be announcing our first few locations sometime in the future here. Anyway, so again, that was in pink, the en-route highway charging. Now the customer-owned depot charging. This is sort of a typical kind of behind-the-fence depot that something like a municipality or state government might have, or a private business that has a bunch of fleet vehicles. They want to keep their vehicles behind the fence. They want them all charged and ready to go in the morning. And we build these. Often we incorporate things like solar canopies or solar carports and batteries, all with an eye toward keeping the overall demand charges as low as possible for the end users. And the reason that I think that institutions are working with us to do this is because NextEra is, again, we're an independent power producer, but we also own Florida Power and Light. So there's a lot of knowledge within NextEra on how to work, to work with utilities. We're basically a subsidiary of a holding company that includes a very large consumer-facing utility, and so we know how to interact with the local distribution system. We work closely with a lot of both publicly and investor-owned utilities all across the country already. Anyway, for these captive depots, Again, this is a charging as a service model. And we do use our own software when we install the chargers. We don't manufacture our own chargers. We use any one of somewhere between 10 and 20 different types of charging hardware, depending on the need and the availability and the price, and of course the preference of the end user. Third model, and this is the one that's a little bit, it's a little bit new and fairly innovative. It's called ePorts. The way to think about this is a little bit like a Pacific Pride card lock facility for diesel fueling, except that this will be a facility that is, it's basically a 2 to 5 acre parking lot that we will redevelop with a whole bunch of charging infrastructure. And as we're developing it, we will contract with surrounding fleet operators to use this site to store and park their vehicles. So for example, we're looking at a location in the Pacific Northwest that's located between 2 big package delivery companies and a big grocery delivery, a big wholesale grocer. And if we end up contracting that site, and there's absolutely no certainty that we will, but if we did, then we would work with those 3 big delivery companies, and each of them would reserve blocks of time when they can reserve their vehicles. And then during the day, there will also be, for overnight charging, there'll be level 2 chargers, and during the day, there'll be fast chargers for opportunity charging during the day. We'll also have on-site snacks and bathrooms and internet connectivity. So if somebody's waiting for their vehicle to charge, they'll have a place to go and take a little break. The advantage of doing this for the fleet operators is basically the infrastructure is going to achieve pretty high utilization, because a lot of different, unlike a captive depot, which will probably be used mostly at night for charging, we're hoping that we're going to figure out a way to ensure that these chargers are busy most of the time. I think during the day, they might end up being used for workplace charging for, people who work at these big warehouses. If they drive electric vehicles to work, they'll be able to plug in during the day. And then when they leave in the evening and the delivery trucks come back, the delivery trucks will slot in and charge. This is just a slide about our software. So irrespective of the type of hardware that we're using, whether it's DC fast chargers or level 2 chargers, as long as it's OCPP compliant, we will be able to install our charging infrastructure and then give the fleet operators a dashboard, so they'll be able to see in real time the charge status of all their vehicles and how close to ready they are for the route that they have planned for the next day. And this is I've been watching demos of the software, and it's starting to be deployed now, and it's really pretty cool software. That's the end of my presentation. I'm the only NextEra employee in Oregon, or the only NextEra mobility employee in Oregon. We do have a big office in San Francisco and a much bigger office on the East Coast, and then we have small offices around the country. But if any of you are interested in learning more about the work that we're doing on fleet electrification, I'd welcome you to take down my number and email address and get in touch. With that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Steve. I don't see any questions. We'll just wait for another minute and give folks time to jot down your information.
I'm on another call.
I'll start off with a question.
It's the last day of the paper, and I want to test it. Okay. Because if we don't test it.
There we go. So I have a question for you, Steve. The medium and heavy duty charging, the vehicles obviously have much larger batteries. You talked about level 2 and level 3. And so what kind of power requirements are those facilities going to have to be, and how big, how big will those chargers typically be? I know we've seen on light duty 50 kW chargers, and now the standard is more like 150 kW for light duty, but I think these batteries are maybe 400 kilowatt hours, 500 kilowatt hours, right? So can you
Yeah,
respond to that?
yeah, I'm, just to be completely transparent, I'm not super super up to speed on all of the technology specs for these facilities, but I do know that at the Green Lane truck stops, they're expecting to have chargers that they're megawatt chargers, right? They're going to be megawatt charging standard level chargers. So these are, they're going to require a huge amount of juice. At the e-ports, which will be more in urban areas and will be primarily for overnight charging, we believe that, well, we know that for for box trucks and other local delivery trucks, a level 2 charger will be enough to get those charged up overnight, at least for most of them. And we know that from having spoken with folks at at Amazon and FedEx, and I mean, they're all planning to have basically local delivery vans that can be charged with a level 2 charger overnight. But the overall draw of these e-ports will depend largely on, just depend on how big they are, whether they be 2 acres or 5 acres, and the overall number of chargers. The e-ports won't be completely covered with EV chargers initially, because we're going to assume that in the near term, some of the commuters will be commuting in internal combustion vehicles. They'll park there and then they'll get in a van to do their local deliveries. But we're certainly going to build the infrastructure so that over time, every parking space in the place can be, we'll have a level 2 charger, most likely.
I'll ask one more question if there aren't. I don't see others
No
yet.
questions.
I have a question as well. But
Oh, Connor, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious that for your e-ports, you mentioned that they will be subscribed by multiple customers, and I was wondering what the order of operations are for building those out. Do you build them in areas that you think you can get subscribed, or do you have basically MOUs or something, contracts with a certain number of fleets before you go in and build these?
It's a great question, Connor. And what we will my understanding, and again, it's not really my program, but my understanding is we'll enter into a lease option or a purchase option for a piece of property, and then basically recruit nearby fleet operators, get them signed up, and once we have a certain percentage of the required monthly revenue sort of locked in, that's when we'll pull the trigger and actually build the things. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg issue. We're not going to build these speculatively and hope that somebody comes and charges there. We're going to do, and we're not going to wait until we have it fully subscribed. We're going to do something in the middle. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
One last quick question I have for Steve is, you talked about the planning, and we have a lot of utility people here on the call who, may have public or private fleets soon or down the road that are interested in charging, fleet vehicles, 10 vehicles or more. How does the participation with the utility typically happen in the beginning? Because clearly the utility has to provide all the power to these charging situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing that happens is once we identify a location in a site that of our choosing, then the first call we make is to the property owner, and the second call is to the local utility. And the reason for that is to determine if the local utility wants to extend, wants to bring power to the site, sufficient power to the site. But we are assuming that in many cases, it will be, we'll be bringing the additional power, we'll be providing the extra power to the site if it's needed. We don't necessarily have to do that, but given the locations of, well, depending on the location, right? If we do this on a former industrial site, there'll be plenty of power there, and we'll just tap into the local power. But if it's in a rural area where there isn't sufficient power to charge, to supply megawatt chargers, then we will likely bring distributed resources, distributed energy and storage resources to that location to serve the vehicles.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I just have one quick kind of wrap up question for you before we turn it over to our second speaker. If there is one thing or two things that you want the attendees to take away from your presentation today, what would those two things be or one thing be?
I think the main thing really is that, we have heard over and over again that transportation electrification sounds easy, but it isn't. And there are lots of things that can go wrong. And what we're really trying to do here is be a trusted partner to institutions that want to do this, but don't want to do it alone. So I think that's the big takeaway. And we're working with big institutions like the Air Force, for example. We're also working with some big package delivery companies, some big food and beverage delivery companies. And if in your service territory you have big fleet operators and they want to start thinking about electrifying and they're looking to you for expertise, give us a call if you want help, because we're eager to get engaged, and you may or may not want to work with us, but if so, I think we'd be really excited to. I'd be personally really excited to get some projects going in the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you so much, Steve. You can mute your mic and relax and enjoy the rest of the presentations. And now for our next presentation, we'll be hearing from Adrian Gomez, our Senior Program Manager at Forth, who manages and leads our Access to Emerging Modes team. Adrian will cover some of the Forth work on agricultural electrification, specifically in the Pacific Northwest. Adrian?
Awesome. Thank you, Simbi. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared here with you all. Perfect. So yes, as Simbi was saying, I lead our Access to Emerging Modes work. And part of that work is the agricultural electrification program that actually Steve Gutman, I believe, had a hand in starting a couple of years ago as well. So yeah, I'm going to just be sharing, some of the stuff that we've been doing and kind of where we're going. So I'm really excited to share this with you all. And so the e-tractor pilot project basically was, the idea of this was conceived in 2020, and it was conceived with Sustainable Northwest, Forth, Y-East, and we partnered with Bonneville Environmental Foundation, and the project actually launched in 2021. And so our core partner group right now is composed of the partners that started the programs, Forth, S&W, Y-East, BEF. We've also worked, with other partners such as Oregon State University, Cadeo, Alumbra Energy Foundation, and Pack Power. We're also working with farming partners on the ground. And so far to date, we've worked with farming operations such as Rusted Gate Farm, Crook County Fairgrounds, Troom Vineyards, and the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition. We do have a list of partner farming operations that are interested in participating in the program, and so we're working on scaling up the program to be able to work with as many farming operations as we can here in the coming years. So we feel really fortunate that there's a lot of interest from farming operations in Oregon and actually beyond. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in the presentation. And so in basically the 2 years or 2 years that the program was launched, we've had the opportunity to test out a couple of select track electric tractors. The first one was the Utility, which was a 40 horsepower unit. I believe we received that in 2021. And then Additionally, we have what's called the Solectrac CET compact electric tractor that we're currently working with. We have 3 of those on rotation in Oregon right now. One of them is with Troon Vineyards. We have another one with the Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, and then currently we have one at Y East that is being worked on. And so moving on, we have had some equipment challenges. For example, the Solectrac e-Utility had several issues that basically rendered it inoperable for our farming partners to utilize. And so we did have conversations with Solectrac and basically came to an agreement that we exchanged the E4 or the e-Utility for the two of the 3 CETs that we have on rotation right now. And still, we've had some issues with the CETs. I think we've experienced everywhere from, the tractor not wanting to start, like a dead battery, basically, to issues with, like mechanical equipment, like the starter. So we've been fortunate enough that we've been able to take care of those issues with help from Solectrac. And so for the most part, the CETs have been utilized and have operated with less issues than what we had experienced with the e-Utility. And then moving on to a case study and analysis that we released last year. So with Oregon State University, we worked with Oregon State University. They developed the total cost of ownership of a compact battery electric agricultural tractor. And then we also worked with CADEO for what's called the Pacific Northwest Electric Tractor Barrier Study. And so these studies were critical to really highlight some of the benefits and the total cost of ownership of electric tractors. Through that, we found that there's, up to 85% reduction of greenhouse gases from electric tractors versus their diesel counterparts. We also found that there was significant savings in terms of, I guess, fueling / charging, or charging versus fueling. And I'll kind of touch on those a little bit more. But like I said, this analysis and this case study really, are critical for us to really kind of share out, what the benefits of electric tractors and really, electrified agricultural equipment, share it more broadly. And we actually, these 2 studies were picked up by Capital Press, and they wrote an article on them. And for the most part, the article or the case studies really did get quite a bit of attention. And so we're looking to build on those as we continue moving forward and really kind of take information or take data from, working with more farming operations to really kind of expand the data that we share out with the community. And then in terms of community outreach, obviously public events have helped to raise awareness, about electric tractors, and we're hoping to expand that to more agricultural equipment. I think Rusted Gate Farms farm stand grand opening in February of last year was actually picked up by a local news station. And Rusted Gate Farms, Joanne Shannon was interviewed with a Solectrac tractor in the background. So that's the type of attention that we'd like to get. But we've also had, help from other partners such as Crook County Fairgrounds, and through their events, such as the Rogue Valley Farm Tour and the Crook River Roundup. 60,000 community members were exposed to electric tractors just in a couple of events. And so obviously, we want to be able to get more community members, as many community members as possible, right, exposed to this equipment, in hopes that, it helps to, drive interest in them and hopefully adoption. So just a couple of lessons learned that we've had. As I stated earlier, we have several farming operations that are basically lined up to participate in the agricultural electrification program. So that's obviously signaling to us that there's significant interest. We're excited to really be working with as many farming operations as possible to test out this equipment. The cost of electric agriculture equipment is rising, and that's still, supply chain issues are still, inflation. The cost of doing business is going up, and so that's obviously affecting, the price of equipment. I know we've gotten a few emails, from tractor OEMs, for example, saying, hey, get an order in by this date, or else it's the cost of the equipment is going to go up. So we're seeing that quite a bit. And so that's obviously, something that as we continue to expand this program and really push, agricultural electrification, it's something that we're going to have to take into account and find ways to work with farmers and, other stakeholders to subsidize the cost of agricultural electrification equipment. The other another point that I wanted to make was that diesel tractors, unfortunately, are still outperforming electric tractors. And, when farmers go and buy or are thinking about purchasing a tractor, the default really always is a diesel powered tractor. So we're hoping that through the work that we're doing with our partners and the expansion of the work that we're doing, that we can identify market transformation strategies to really start causing a shift in that sort of behavior from farmers across the country. The other thing too that we've learned is that electric tractors, I don't want to say are not enough, right? But I mean, we really need to be able to offer a slew of different electrified agricultural equipment. So electric UTVs, mini excavators, even electric pickup trucks. And so that's something that we're thinking about as we continue to move the work forward. And it's something that we really, want to address. And so through the work that we're going to do, that we have planned to do this year, we're already purchasing, electric pickup trucks. We're looking at a Polaris EUTV to add to the equipment that we're going to have on rotation in the coming year. And then finally, the big one really is just setting proper expectations, with our farming partners and really with the farming community about what this technology can do now. We'd love to see electric tractors in every farming operation across the country, but the reality situation is that they're not, in terms of the capacity and longevity out in the field, in terms of how long they can work with, or I guess what I'm getting at is how long they can be on the field on a daily basis, right? Diesel tractors can be out basically from dawn till dusk, and electric tractors right now have an average battery life of about 3 to 6 hours. So obviously that's a big obstacle that electric tractors still need to overcome in order to really, be the default, as I had stated earlier. But setting the expectations that, hey, this electric tractor isn't going to last all day, I think is important in order for farmers to really understand the technology and its capabilities at the moment, and to ensure that we're not setting too high expectations that the technology and equipment can't meet. So some of the benefits of agricultural equipment include obviously significant health benefits for farmers. They're going to be breathing in the exhaust from diesel tractors. So that's a huge win, and that's actually a win for the community as a whole as well. Another benefit is reduction in hearing loss. Diesel tractors are really loud, and that presents issues for farmers with regards to their hearing. So there's just a few of the health benefits. I'm sure there's a lot more, but these are some of the more present ones. And then the other thing too is that electric tractors are more efficient than their diesel counterparts. So for example, tractors usually will sit idle for a while. They actually sit idle quite a bit on farms. So, for example, battery electric tractors don't use no power while idling, right? So that's already an efficiency, positive efficiency impact. Additionally, electric motors convert 77% of their energy stored versus I think it was like 12 to 30% of the energy produced by internal or by diesel for traditional tractors. And then all of that really leads to cost savings with regards to fueling / charging. So right now the average cost of a gallon of diesel is $4.76 versus the equivalent of 47 cents for an electric tractor. And here are some of the equipment that's that can be used on farming operations that go beyond electric tractors. So here we have a Volvo ECR 25. Then next to it we have the JCB I9C-IE. So we have an excavator. And again, this is the sort of equipment that we need to get out to farming operations to test out, to offer an expanded range of equipment, not just the typical like the tractor or an electric pickup truck. And then we have right here the Polaris Kinetic X Ranger XP, which is the EUTV, and then next to it we have the Evolution Series ZTR riding mower. That's also available for purchase. Yeah. And so really what's next for the program? So we're looking to expand beyond. So we're looking to expand our program in Oregon. We just recently received funding from DOE to expand the program in the state. But we are looking elsewhere. We're looking, at Washington. We've had requests from other states in the Midwest as well. So that's something that we're looking into. Really again expanding this program, or helping other states and other organizations across the U.S. to create programs such as ours. We're looking to expand again, like I stated earlier. We're looking to expand on the farming partners that we have. We have several. I think right now we have, it was close to like 36 or 37 farming operations that are waiting for us to work with them. So in the next 3 years, with the money that we're getting with from DOE, we're going to work to get these farming operations as a part of our program. And then finally, just test out newer equipment and different types of equipment. Like I said, we firmly believe that offering up, other equipment like the EUTVs, even like the electric mowers, electric pickup trucks, all of that, it's really going to provide a robust experience, around electrified agriculture equipment for our farming partners. And that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for the presentation. Please leave this just this screen up so folks can get your information and the others that are part of the programs. We do have a question. I think it's more of a comment, but we do have some questions that we've prepared for you. If there are other questions, please put them in the meeting chat. But one question that that we had was regarding the batteries and how long does the batteries last, and if for some reason batteries have to be replaced within the project, how much does the total cost for that?
Yeah, the Solectrac models that we have out right now have battery capacities of 3 to 6 hours. Obviously, that fluctuates with the type of usage and the climate as well. Other models can offer more or less capacity, right? But the 3 to 6 hour range really is kind of like that standard, that average that we're hearing from different OEMs. Then battery replacements can cost, up to 10K. It's what we paid for one of the Solectrac units. So I'm assuming that obviously the bigger the battery, the higher the cost. But for the CET, again, it's a smaller tractor. They're looking at about 10K and up from there.
Thank you. So 2 questions. We have a lot more, but so what types of tasks are these smaller tractors within the program suited to perform?
Yeah, they're suited to perform smaller smaller farming operation tasks. So again, we have one at a vineyard. We've heard, some of these are good for like hobby farmers, right? They're not really ready for large farming operations just yet, both because of the limitations on how long they can be out in the field, plus the limitations on the power as well. So yeah, it's more for like smaller farms, hobby farmers. And the hope is that here in the next, couple of years, tractors are developed to really be out, on bigger farming operations.
Thank you. And can these small tractors be charged by level 2 DC fast charging? What type of charging are we looking at?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about DC fast charging. I haven't really heard too much from that. At least the ones that we have. I believe they can be charged with a level 2. So they're not bound to trickle charging. They can be used for level 2.
Yeah, and we just got a question, and it's kind of a 2-pronged question. What large equipments, examples, combined scrap excavators are being tested currently? I'll ask that first, then go into the second part.
Yeah, so we don't have any large equipment as of yet. There are some limitations. Again, we're waiting to reserve a 70 horsepower tractor from Solectrac. We've been kind of working with them to finalize that. We also have a couple of Monarchs, but currently, we don't have any large scale equipment. The E40 or the Utility, which is a 40 horsepower tractor, was going to be a little bit more on the medium / heavier side, but obviously, we had issues with that and had to return it. So, but we do plan on testing out larger equipment.
Yeah, and when you discuss the cost of fuel for the tractors, does the calculation include the cost of added utility infrastructure if those are involved as well?
I believe it wasn't. I am not too clear on that. I'm not too sure that the cost of utility infrastructure was added to that. I think it was just like the fuel that was taken into account.
Thank you. Could you speak to some of the data regarding, or if you have data regarding how these tractors worked in colder climates, like during the snow or when it's really cold? Is there a difference in how performance?
Yeah, we don't have data in terms of how these tractors perform in different types of climate, but that is something that we're looking to add in the expansion of our program. Like I said, we're looking to add more farming operations, and obviously that's going to increase the types of atmospheres that these tractors are going to be operating on. So stay tuned. We'll have information on that. We just don't have that now.
Thank you. Maybe I'll give you 2 more questions so you're not on the hot seat much longer. Can you speak to some of the data collected through telematics and the OSU analysis, some key things that our attendees might want to take away from that?
Yeah, so to capture data, we utilized what's called a supervisory control and data acquisition system, or SCADA system. That captured, GHG emissions data, efficiency data, use time, and noise level as well. And all of that was transmitted to a cloud server that we have, working with a company that helps to capture that data. And then we work with other partners such as OSU to analyze that data. And, some of the key findings that we had from there, for example, were, like I had stated, a reduction of greenhouse emissions, a pretty significant reduction. We were seeing anywhere from, e-tractors producing 1.56 to 4.84 metric tons of CO2 versus their diesel counterparts that were producing, anywhere from 11 to 30 metric tons. So we're looking at anywhere from 10 times to 10 or 7 to 10 times more emissions from emission reduction from electric tractors. The other thing that we saw was that the cost of electric tractors really are a little bit higher once they are when they are purchased. But really, the more they are used, the more savings that farming operations can experience. And so that comes with, that comes from the reduction of, of charging the cost, the low cost of charging the tractors, to, the maintenance savings costs, obviously, because electric tractors have fewer moving parts than their diesel counterparts. So all around, we saw, through this, we saw, that obviously there's a huge reduction in emissions. Yes, it does cost more upfront to purchase an electric tractor, but throughout the life of the tractor, we were projected that there's some significant savings. I think it was anywhere from like $700 to $1,000 a month. a year for those savings.
Thank you. And to wrap it up, can you give us one success, something you're really proud of within the e-tractor program so far, and one thing that was really, really surprising to you and the team when this project launched?
Yeah, I think the surprising thing was the interest from, the farming community in electric tractors first. And now we're starting to see, kind of, seeing them get more excited about other agricultural electrification equipment. And I think the biggest success, I would say, for us was, I don't mean to make this about money, but the fact that, we were able to get some money from the federal government to expand our program really speaks to, kind of what the climate is like out there with regards to this sort of technology and equipment. So that was a big win for us. Obviously, we get to expand the program, but the fact that it's considered and that it was funded for an expansion really is a big win for not just us, but really the whole sector.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation today. You can now enjoy the rest of the conversation as I pass it along to our final speaker of the afternoon, Connor Herman. Connor is a program manager at Forth and manages the Go Forth Electric Car Share program, as well as the St. Louis Vehicle Electrification Rides for Seniors Silvers programs. O'Connor.
Thank you, Simbi. Hello, everyone. I know quite a few of you, but for the new folks here, nice to virtually meet you. Just get my slides set up. And can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, as Simbi said, I'll be talking about the Go Forth car share, also colloquially known as the Affordable Mobility Platform. There are some utilities on the call that are involved in that program, and probably some folks that don't know about it. So I will get into it, and then please ask any questions at the end. So starting off, what is the Go Forth car share program? I think even before that, we should start with what is car share. And that's the ability for multiple users to leverage one asset, one vehicle, and use it for rides without needing to carry their own individual financial obligation to owning a car or insurance or any of the liability with maintaining that car. And usually you can use a platform to reserve it for the time you want to use that car, and take it out on your own time and pay some kind of rental fee essentially to use that vehicle. So it's a bit like car rental, but more on demand. And this model has been relatively popular in more urban areas, but it really hasn't been able to make it into more rural areas or lower income areas because it is really the more dense and affluent, the better chances are for the business model for private companies. So really the impetus of this project was to test this out in markets that necessarily aren't the private companies' first market they would go into. Additionally, another idea behind this was Forth has done a lot of events, probably with some organizations on this call, ride and drives, or just education and outreach events to educate people on EVs. We know, and we have lots of data, that the best way for folks to get acquainted with electric vehicles and get past any misconceptions related to them are to get behind the wheel themselves. So another idea of this was a way to put EVs in these markets where folks probably have never driven one or maybe even seen one because the local dealers aren't carrying them, or maybe there aren't even dealerships in the first place. So by putting the vehicle out in these communities, it can increase some awareness as well. So that brings us to our first bullet here of, what is the program? It's an opportunity to learn about and experience EVs in these other communities. And then the other impetus for the project was to be able to provide affordable car sharing for communities. So you can still get the experience and the benefits of driving an electric vehicle without necessarily having to own one yourself. Currently, we're operating 8 Leafs and Bolts, which you can rent for $4 an hour. You're not required to carry your own insurance to use that car to bring down as many barriers as possible. And I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like a bit more from the user perspective, but then also just highlighting that this has really been a very collaborative effort so far. It started as a pilot project put together by Forth with funding from the American Public Power Association, BEF, and the following participating utilities where the cars are actually going into their service territory. And then we've gotten some additional funding over the past 6 months or so from the Washington Department of Transportation and some additional utilities to kind of take what we're doing in this initial pilot and continue to grow the project. So from the user experience, it's primarily an app-based network. So you download the MioCar Networks app from your phone, then you go through the registration process. After you register, that includes submitting an image of your driver's license. There is a DMV motor vehicles records check to make sure you are a qualified driver. Once that process goes through, you're given a hands-on phone or Zoom orientation with one of Forth staff. And then after that, you are good to go. And you can reserve the vehicle using the app. unlock and locking the vehicle also on your phone. You show up at the car, you unplug it to take a drive, you do your business. After you're done, you return the vehicle, you plug it in, and you end your reservation via the app. We also have 24/7 customer support available if there are any issues. And for folks that maybe have limited access to their phone, you can also call us or use a web platform to make a reservation. And then we've recently just rolled out RFID cards, which can use to lock and unlock the vehicles. So for folks that maybe don't have as access to smartphones or maybe not good service, we have some workarounds that we're rolling out as well. So as I mentioned, we have 8 vehicles so far. Those sites are listed over on the left. And then we also have some more sites coming in Dufur, Longview, Washington, Ashland, another site in Eugene, and then later in the year, Jackson, Wyoming, and Bingen and White Salmon, Washington, in the Columbia River Gorge. So essentially our first vehicle started rolling out. It has been a vehicle or two every couple of months since January of 2022. So in our 1 year of some sort of operations, we do have some pretty good data on what that is. So far, vehicles have been used for about 3,300 hours. There's been 594 individual trip starts, and across the fleet, they've been used about 9.2 hours per day. As you can see here, that varies pretty greatly among the vehicles. Our top vehicle here is used over 1,000 hours and has around 2,500 miles driven, while our second vehicle has close to 700 hours used, but over 6,000 miles driven during that time. So some interesting data there. The active users that you can see is basically folks that have taken a ride in the last 90 days from when this snapshot was taken. So some other stats that we also have a survey in the car, which folks can take to get riding credit. Of the 39 responses we have so far, we have 4.4 out of 5 stars for user rating. 58% of respondents said it was their first time driving an EV. We've had a total of 171 signups. So that means we've basically ran 171 motor vehicle records checks for potential members. And then we've approved 150 drivers. So 150 folks can drive it. And then, as I mentioned here, we have about 52 folks that have actually taken a ride. And that number is also removing any force staff or the cleaning staff that may have rented the car. So that's actual community members using the vehicle. And just a couple of quotes here that we've gotten from the surveys. I love driving it, smooth ride, and this car has been a lifesaver. We've had quite a few different use cases, from folks just wanting to try it out to folks having their car in the shop and they need a temporary vehicle to use, to just not having a vehicle whatsoever. One of the vehicles specifically is located at a senior living community, the one in Bend. So specifically working with an older population, a lot of them don't have their own cars, so they can use the car to make appointments, go to the doctors and things like that. So that car has been one of our most utilized to date. So the program has definitely not been without its challenges. These are problems that we face, but also one of our goals for this program is, not just to do it ourselves. We really want to come up with a playbook and some best practices, so other entities, not just Forth, can really take this idea and try to make this modular community car sharing, in these communities more prevalent. So just some of the problems that we faced are, insurance is a big one. Entities with no history and a low number of vehicles trying to get car sharing insurance is either cost prohibitive or just not capable of getting it. So some challenges there. The vehicle procurement, vehicle market has been quite crazy the last couple of years. I mean, since we originally budgeted this program, the vehicle prices or the vehicles that we originally were going to use went up more than 50% in price. So that has created a lot of challenges. Location is very important, as you saw on that table of utilization of our fleet so far, that there's a pretty big disparity between that. And we're finding that our vehicles that are actually located at housing developments are the ones getting the most use. A few of our sites are actually, maybe in more like the downtown area or at the utility offices. And those sites just honestly aren't getting as used because I think they're just not as front and center, not as connected to, just being able to walk out your front door and hop in the car. Also having some challenges with vehicle service and maintenance. Like Fourth was new to this kind of service, so we've definitely been figuring it out as we go. Charging station service and maintenance. It's one thing, everyone said it, that charging stations just seem to have some power. A lot of times it's just they need to be, a hard reset the breaker, but whether it's the network or whatever, and in most of these cases, we don't own or operate the charging infrastructure. It's a local partner that does that. So just maintaining that communication with the entity to try to get these issues handled in a timely manner so we can make sure that vehicle maintains charge is super important and has its challenges. Also, we're learning a lot with our software and hardware we're using in the vehicles. It's definitely not a perfect system. There are some bugs, so appreciate any of new users that get through it. We try to walk that out, but we're just one of, we didn't make this software. We pay to use it. Another company developed it, and we have our own little entity on there. So acknowledging that has some issues. So we may be open to some new hardware and software in the future, or just hoping that we can continue to improve the ones that we're using. One of the issues we're finding is for some of these vehicles that just don't get enough utilization, the little bit of drain from the telematics unit on the 12-volt battery in these cars can make it go dead. So that's something that hasn't happened a ton, but it's not a non-zero problem. And finally, like long-term sustainability, we want as much utilization as we can. So relying on our utility partners to try to get the word out to their members or customers. We've been doing some social media campaigns. We've also done in-person events at every vehicle. So doing as much as we can to just try to get as many users as possible. And that ultimately leads to the financials for long-term sustainability. It's never going to be completely financially sustainable for a company just to do this purely based on revenue is what we're finding. So it's really going to take some subsidies, whether that's grant funding, utility partner funding, municipal funding, whatever it might be. But if we do find the value of having this access to these services in the community, there's going to need to be some subsidized funding, especially if we want to keep it at this lower hourly rate, which makes it affordable and accessible for everyone. So that is mostly the high level overview. If you're interested in car sharing and learning more about the potential in your community or just any of our learnings, I'm happy to share as much as I have and talk about the future of the program. So you can contact me. And then we also have our website, goforthcarshare.com, which is the user facing side. So you can visit that if you're interested in signing up yourself or just want to see what it looks like from the user perspective.
Thank you, Connor, for the presentation. We already have questions for you prepped. So the first one is, when users reserve a car, can they view online calendar style the availability of the vehicle?
Yeah, that is one issue with the platform that we're currently using. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you on the forefront, like you can't look at days and see when it's available. You kind of just have to pick your date and time, and it'll either tell you for that car if it's either available or not. We can see that on the back end. So worst case scenario, they can call and ask, but unfortunately, that's not built right into the user side.
Thank you. And another question, have you had issues within the Go Forth car share with trolls or sabotage?
I wouldn't say trolls or sabotage. We've honestly been pretty lucky with most users. I can say just recently we did have an issue with some members who definitely did some things that they didn't abide by the member guidebook and the terms and conditions that they have to sign up for. Fortunately, they didn't end up hurting the asset or anything. It was just kind of a headache and a little bit of money. And dealing with things like running out of battery far from where they were supposed to be. But I think that's just kind of par for the course, that there's going to be some folks. It's a new, I don't want to necessarily blame the individual. It is a new technology, both, electric vehicles, charging, car sharing. So we try to do our best during our orientations to alleviate any potential issues, but I think things are just going to happen, and we just need to build that into our budgets for these circumstances.
Okay, another attendee question. What are the general characteristics of your best performing car sharing locations?
The best performing locations are definitely, well, we have, I'd say, 2 top performing locations. One is about 4 of the sites are actually located at affordable housing development. So predominantly multi-unit dwelling, several apartments, where the cars and the charging station are located right in the parking lot. And probably 90% of those users are folks that live right there. It really only takes probably 8 users, somewhat using the program for it to start making financial, and I would say like community sense of like, this is providing an asset. If 8 people can use one shared car instead of 8 individual cars, that is a win for a lot of reasons. And then the other location is one in Eugene. That is a little bit of a bigger city rather than rural, but we have one located at the transit district there. That's right central to, it's both a park and ride and central to a lot of buses and other transportation. So that one is also one of our most utilized cars. So I think being connected to other transportation options is also critical, if it's not going to be basically located right out the front door of where users are at.
Thank you. And what is the commitment by the utility to participate in the car share program?
Thomas,
did you mean financially or other partners?
Well, how are they involved? I think it's unique that how are they involved with the Go Forth program?
Yeah, so our utilities really are, they're both financial sponsors, but really looking at it more as partners. We, in a lot of situations, in all the situations so far, the utility has been responsible for making sure the charging infrastructure is available or in the ground, and in most cases paying for the actual electricity that charges the car. So that's a really big help, and then making sure there's just uptime in the operations of those charging stations when they can. They don't all own those charging stations, so sometimes it's a little more difficult, but really being helpful, because a lot of times, like a housing site, for instance, they don't really know what to do when their charging station's not working. So having some additional help there. Marketing is really huge. The biggest thing is just people need to know about it. So in a lot of places, maybe they can see the car, but flyers, mailers, website, social media, anything we can do to spread the word is just going to help with that. And then finally, just, as I mentioned, financially, it's really necessary for this. If we want this program to be in, there's a reason for-profit entities aren't doing it in a lot of the communities that we're all located in. So finding that it is a public good, that there are a lot of benefits to providing this kind of service, and that's what we want to do with the program, is try to put some data behind that and how much value it actually is, and then move forward with continuing to get funding to try to do more of this.
Thank you. Can you speak to some of the equity considerations for the Go Forth car share, and also speak to how the pricing model for the carshare is compares to other, whether EV car sharing program or non-EV car sharing program. And I see Steve Goodman has his hands up as well.
Yeah, I glossed over the first question, so I remember the second question. It was about comparing to other prices, so I'll answer that first. It sort of depends because there are a few different kinds of car sharing out there. There's peer-to-peer, so there's apps like Turo or Get Around, which individuals can just put their car share or their car on there to be used. Those are typically more expensive. I mean, that could range anywhere from 50 to 150 per day, depending on the type of vehicle it is. Probably not going to be electric, but there are some, probably in more urban areas, there will be electric options. And then the closest competitor in like the model that we're working on is Zipcar, which is a station-based vehicle sharing program. They don't use a lot of EVs that I'm aware of, but their prices can range anywhere from $10 to $20 an hour, depending on the market and what it's at. So our prices are at a minimum half the price of anything comparable out there.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, just real quickly, I was at the Transportation Research Board's annual meeting in DC over the weekend and early this week, and the new head of the joint office of the DOE and the DOT is a guy named Gabe Klein, and he's a former Zipcar guy. He used to work at Zipcar, and then he set up bike share systems in DC and Chicago as well. And he said in a breakfast meeting that he thinks that, and he wasn't just talking to me, he was talking to a group, that he thinks that EV car sharing is a radically underappreciated way to get more low-income people access to EVs. And so I would encourage you to reach out to Gabe Klein, and I'd be happy to make an introduction if you want to meet him. I think he's going to be in a position to shovel a lot more funding toward electric vehicle car sharing, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Definitely would love to get the contact from you. And that kind of raised a good point about additional funding. I think it is becoming a hotter topic. The state of Washington last year had their ZAP grant, zero emission access program, which specifically had, I don't know how much the total was, but I mean, upwards of $1 million for a first year grant, specifically to fund underserved community car sharing. So for the Washington utilities out there, they've had the first year and the second year of that funding. I don't know if they've announced when they will announce it, but anywhere from February to May. And there will be more funding. So if you're interested in your communities, I think be on the lookout for that, and would love to potentially collaborate on putting some kind of proposal together, having the utility support, whether it be matching funds or just hardware, infrastructure, marketing, really anything. There's a lot of ways that we can partner. So yeah, please reach out if you're interested in that.
Yeah, Thomas?
Well, first of all, Connor, thank you for all the work on this program. I know it hasn't always been easy, but it's been a couple years now since BEF and Forth and Steve, when he was at Forth, started to put this together. So it's been a great learning experience. You showed the utilization, and I think I've read somewhere that one car share vehicle potentially takes something like 9 to 13 cars off the road, individual cars. I'm wondering, what's the upper level of utilization for one vehicle? At what point do you sort of max out a single vehicle and then you need a second vehicle at a location?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say we haven't hit it yet in our vehicles, in our top utilized vehicle. And I think an important distinction there is that the target use case isn't, let's say, commuters where the car would be gone for like 8 or 9 hours a day. Obviously that takes out a big chunk, but since we're just trying to really focusing on, let's say, these 1 to 4 hour trips to do some errands, we haven't really seen that in our even in our best cars that are our best performing locations that are getting something like 3 hours of day, about 2.9 hours, I believe, is our most utilized vehicle at this point. And that has about 8 active users. So it's like 8 active users, it's getting about 3 hours. So I mean, realistically, it's less about the users and the amount that they're using that car. I mean, you could have 2 people that monopolize it if they are. So I think probably just kind of pulling a number out of my hat would be, if we see greater than 4 to 6 hours of utilization today, that's probably when we need to start looking at a second car.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the final question, you spoke of some challenges with just car sharing in general. Could you speak to, let's look at the crystal ball for in 5 years, where would you like to see the Go Forth car share program? What innovations would you want to see included just from the lessons learned that we have right now?
Yeah, that's a fun question. I mean, ultimately, I would lay out my ultimate vision for what I think we should be doing. Maybe not necessarily speaking as an organization, but personally, I would love to create an environment and ecosystem that makes it very easy for smaller organizations and entities to know how to have a car sharing vehicle and bring community car sharing to their hyperlocal community, and that it can be affordable by leveraging economies of scale through a shared platform, shared insurance option, potentially shared best practices, user agreements, legal requirements, basically creating something. And I think Forth, as a thought leader in this space, rather than an operator, is in a position to help kind of levy this forward. But in doing so, we felt that we really needed our operations experience to be able to help out with that and have that firsthand experience with what's needed. And I think we've done a really good job of figuring out what works and what doesn't work so far. So yeah, 5 years, I would say there's an option out there, whether Forth is directly involved in not, but to bring down the barriers for everyone to participate in these types of programs.
Thank you. I mean, you said it out now, so maybe it's not going to take 5 years. Maybe it can happen in a year, 2 years. Maybe
Yeah, we'll see how to make it happen.
Thank you so much. And with that, we are done with the presentations. Thomas, do you have any final words for our attendees today?
I would just like to say thank you to all the presenters. Excellent information. Thank you for everyone for attending. BEF and Forth are always resources. If you have any ideas or questions, you can always reach out to us. And we will look forward to seeing you at the next quarterly roundtable later this year.
Thank you all so much, and we look forward to more conversations. We will share the recording and the presentations with you in the coming day. Thank you all.